Good evening. Welcome to Wednesday. I haven't decided what I'm going to call this day yet, but let's call it Wednesday Science Chats for now, or Science Chats. But yeah, it's Wednesday. It's 6:30, and you know what time it is. It's time for another Science Chat. Where we're going to be speaking to either organization, a scientist, or somebody in psychom who's doing something amazing. I'm not going to waste any time. Today we are joined by Mr. David Asumadu Boateng. He is the project director for Asustem Robotics Academy. So he'll be joining us and telling us a little bit about the academy. They are based in Accra, Ghana. So I'm really excited to have a conversation with him and hear what they're all about. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Ntigi Saki and I am the founder and CEO of Siakula Digital. In a nutshell, we do SciComm. In a nutshell, we do marketing for scientists. All right, so let me get them to join and get this conversation started. All right, so we're just waiting for them to join or accept the request. Because there we go. Good afternoon on your side.
On your side too.
How are you?
Great.
Okay. So are you ready?
Yes, please.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I'm really excited to have the chat with you and conversation. I think it's going to be really great to get to know more about your work, and why you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. And so I think right after I worked with it for a while, even before going for my university program, because I really enjoyed it. And IT is more of a hands-on technical. So you really need to play with your hands. You always have to solve a problem, full of configurations and all that. So that is how I got interested in IT, and I've been doing IT almost in everything. I actually sleep with it.
Wow, okay. So you enjoyed it. It's beautiful that you eventually found something you're passionate about after you were so sure that you wanted to be a medical doctor, and here you are now, in the IT field. You're enjoying it so much that you now have a whole academy that is based around IT, Asustem Robotics. Tell us a little bit about the academy, why you started it, the inspiration behind it.
I found that problem of not having students engage practically in what they are doing to bring out that curiosity in them, because there are a lot of science laws, but what does it really mean? How do you actually connect it with your environment? It's very difficult when you're actually learning stuff in an abstract way. But what our system is all about is to make sure whatever they are learning or things around them, they will be able to practice it. And also in line with the technological advancement that is peaking very fast. So it prepares them for future jobs. So basically, as far as our system is concerned, what we're trying to do is that we're creating a different set of generation that are going to help develop Africa in the way it is supposed to be, but not always inheriting foreign, what do you call it, support in terms of technical support or advancement, especially in the technological world, because things are moving very fast. And if you look at some of the research that were done, I think in 2010, World Economic Forum, they worked on their human capital index, and they made some inciting, what do you call it, projections, where they were saying that by 2030, Africa is going to have about 200 million working individuals. That is actually going to be the youngest continent. So it means that if we're able to develop this group of a generation, we'll actually be able to fix our issues. We will even be able to export human capital to other. That's like what the Chinese and the Indians are doing now. Now, when you go anywhere, either a Chinese, what do you call it, a CEO or an Indian CEO, taking care of these wonderful global giants now. The reason being that at a particular period of their development in their continent or their country, they actually saw it and they developed them. So that is why we are also making sure we help the Africa. So our system is basically for Africa.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the fact that you mentioned two things that are very interesting. One, obviously, the focus being on Africa, and two, that Africa is actually one of the youngest continents in the world, the youngest in terms of our population. Our population is very young. We don't have as many older people as other countries have. You have countries where their generation is very old, but here we are so young, so the potential is so big, right? And you've really touched on, because one of the questions I was going to ask you was, do you feel Africa is ready for something like this? And why is it so important that Africa has something like this?
Yeah, so that's a very deep question. The reason why Africa is supposed to have something like this to make sure we basically compete on the global scale, looking at the way things are going. Even if you take something like artificial intelligence, it is moving very fast that within the next 2-3 years, it is going to be everywhere. So the issue is that we have the human capital, we have the capacity built up for it. Are we always going to import what you call professionals from India, from China, from the US to support us with our own infrastructure? So those are the reasons why we have to take a bold step now and actually develop our own, because you realize that most of these projects that happen in Africa are basically through funding. And when these funds come, because the donor wants to make sure the fund is used properly and the project is done successfully, they end up coming with their own people. So we have IT engineers here. We have a lot of what do you call it, a specialized professions here. But because we've not been able to develop it to that majority, it is very difficult. You can count the number of specialties in certain areas in IT in Africa where they are just moving through the various regions. But our idea is that if you're able to develop a very large scale of these young students and the youth, it means that we should be able to design our own. We should be able to solve our own problems by our own innovations and inventions, even when we are getting the aid. So that is what I think that Africa should look at. Either than that, will be out of the system and also the global scale. And in that case, it also generally affects our economic growth. That's what we definitely need it in almost every sector. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So let me push you into the deep end. This is a very near political question.
Yeah.
All right. So you've mentioned why we need it. And you also mentioned something that tends to be a barrier for most people, and that is funding, capital. We have the human capital, but we don't have the financial capital, right? So, what steps can we take to maybe acquire these funds to be able to do these things? Or do you feel that it can be done maybe from the beginning without funds and then getting funds later?
Yeah, so I can actually use my setup, for example. I've been running
Yes.
almost 4 years now. I have never received a single funding. I do it all by myself and my partners, my co-founder. We try to mobilize and see her because the passion is there. I believe that anything that you start, once you have the passion, you keep driving it before you get a support. Because once you have the concept, anybody will be willing to support you.
Actually, I agree with that. We once interviewed a professor in South Africa. Her name is Professor Shelley Mutawung, and she mentioned that funders fund businesses, not ideas. They want to sometimes see that the business is running, that you're actually serious about what you're doing, and you're willing to sacrifice whatever you have
Exactly.
then they are willing to come on board and say, okay, we can invest in this. Because eventually they invest in you, isn't it?
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, that's amazing. So when you started the academy, how was the reception in the community? How did the community receive it?
Yeah, so I think if you come to most of our communities, the settings are different. You can actually see the rich, you can see the poor, and the middle. So I think I remember piloting this for almost a year because I wanted to see how it is going to be adapted in the community. So just a community about some few kilometers away from my end, one of the popular schools around where my kids are. I approached the headmistress. This is what I want to help the kids with, but I would like to use your center to do the practical sections. And they agreed. So I was supposed to go there for a demonstration of how and what are the things I was going to show them and share all my proposals with them. So one afternoon, I think just about the time the students were on break, I ended up doing a demonstration to the headmistress right in front of her office. So immediately I put robots down and they were actually maneuvering and trying to detect objects or avoid objects instead of. Then all of a sudden, the whole place was packed with students. They couldn't believe that they've seen robots in their school and right in front of the headmistress. So the headmistress told me, you know what, you have to start this next Saturday. So parents who were interested also signed up and we took it off somewhere around the 2018, latter part of 2017. And we ran it for almost like 6 months on pilot basis before we started stretching to the other communities. So typically we have communities basically interval of about 100 kilometers and where parents can easily drive their kids there every Saturday. Then they pack these sections. Yeah. So that's how, and it was really, really receptive. And we
Yeah.
keep in a lot of what do you call it, parents signing up for the awards. Some have 5 kids, 4 kids, all of them are enrolled in the program, and it's them a lot.
So then, what you're doing is amazing, but how do you, or what answer do you give a parent who says to you, what are the career options here? Is there a guarantee that my child will actually get a job doing this? Because I feel that's the most important thing, especially when we sometimes look at the African context, right? We want our kids to do or go into careers that we know they'll definitely get a job, they'll definitely get paid, and definitely be able to put food on the table. So then, what do you tell them about this? Because this, like you say, you're preparing them for the future. And for the
Yeah.
future, some careers don't even exist yet. They are still coming. We don't even we don't even know what they are yet in some instances. So what do you say to a parent to ask you that or has those kind of concerns?
Yeah. So surprisingly, I always tell them that we are preparing your son or your daughter for a job that you are not aware. And they ask how. Then I tell them there are a lot of development as far as technology is concerned. Just even looking at artificial intelligence, there are so many amazing areas that is helping in every single sector. So it means that even if you're a medical doctor, without artificial intelligence or also learning just basic robotic skills, you cannot perform your duties. Now we're doing a lot of what they call robotic surgery in
Yes.
so the robotic surgeries are the most successful and it's been proven because, for example, if I'm supposed to do a procedure where I have to cut a certain depth, the robot is going to cut like half of that. So it actually improves your healing. I hope you are getting me. And
Yes.
there are some of the minimal invasive surgeries that this robot is able to just go directly to where the problem is and fix it without the patient even feeling anything. So it tells you that regardless of the sector that you find yourself, you definitely need these. I can give you more examples, even with what do you call it, marketing. Marketing. We run a program here for the kids. We call it Python for Kids. It's one of the best languages so far where you can use it to develop any application, do a lot of data analytics. And if you're a marketer and you don't have a skill or develop yourself in that area, it means that in the next 5 years, you'll be out of your job because a marketer is supposed to be able to script by himself or herself, trying to understand the data of the organization. So running these tools on your own data can actually tell you where you need to open your next branch, or how your company like in the next 5 years. Those are the predictive analysis I'm talking about. And you have to be able to, are you getting? A typical
Yes.
example, we graze with a lot of agric, and we have so many lands for agric production. Now, we call it the area robotics. That is the drones. You can use drones to do so many things now, even spraying your crops, protecting the health life of these crops. And within a scan of maybe a number of sectors, you should be able to tell you that, okay, this particular area of crops are actually infested with a particular disease. Instead of you so many, what do you call it, hectares and kilometers, just doing your scouting yourself. So it tells you that AI is shaping almost every single sector as far as technology is concerned. And it means that a farmer now needs how to program or how to run the drone. I hope you are getting.
Yes.
And the same way, any professional who wants to venture into drone rental or drone specialty for the various areas, it can be for security surveillance, helping the security agencies to track problems, identify issues. That is a major job where we believe that students that we're training will actually be taking over that. Issues of emergency response, where a student we're grooming now, by 2015, 2020, 2030, that student should be able to help the country with a fire and emergency system. There's a fire outbreak somewhere, a drone is quickly triggered there to scan the situation. Pictures are actually being printed even at the fire tender office before they move the intended vans, because it tells them what is happening on the ground. But you don't go to the ground or coming back to take more logistics, but you move all the logistics and you fight the fire immediately. So there are so many interventions that what you call it, AI is going to bring. And the issue here and the challenge here is that if you don't groom your child or prepare your child in that space, and for Africa to be specific, then it means that we'll continue to look for support. We'll continue to fetch what do you call it, technical competence from. And sometimes when the issue happens, sometimes you have to fly an aeroplane or maybe a drone from the United States of America to an issue here in Africa. So if you calculate the number of minutes and hours it will take for response, then we'll actually be we'll be in trouble going for looking at the way. So it will be better we train this set of generation, be prepared. They should be able to. And don't forget that UN is saying that we will be the youngest, what do you call it, continent.
Yes. I'm going to play the devil's advocate. I can tell that this is a question that you get a lot, which is why you are ready with examples, many examples. But here, I'm going to play the devil's advocate and ask you this. We know that AI is amazing. I'm in full support of it. But the other hand is that some people will be out of jobs because there's certain jobs that the robots can perform, which a human used to perform that I won't need a human for anymore. So in a continent where unemployment is already so high, what then?
Okay, so I always answer this question that robots are just machines and you need humans to instruct it. So it means that if you are the top personal assistant or you being the top receptionist in an organization, you will have to make sure you feed that robot with very, very good instructions, like the way you always operate, with very good information, so that it will be able to interact even with your guests. So imagine that you are not able to do that. That is where you'll be laid off from wherever you're working. Because at the end of the day, you have been in the industry, you know how it is supposed to work, even with the natural language. Now, these days, we have a lot of robots doing even serving at the restaurants. You enter in, this is going to actually ask you a few questions based on the answer. that it gives you where to go, or it directs you where to go. And these things are actually crafted and designed by the people or the subject experts in that area. So it means that if I was a receptionist and now I've been able to study robotics, I should be able to give very good instructional language to these devices as and when we that area. So you will never lose your job. I hope you understand.
I hope we don't. I hope we don't. You know, the reason why I'm asking you this is because, for example, a very basic example is self-service at the bank, right?
Yeah.
A few years ago, I would go into the bank and there would be 10
Yeah.
tellers maybe to
Exactly.
assist me. Because to withdraw money, to deposit, to whatever. But now, because I can do all of these things at the ATM just outside, I don't need to go into the bank. I've seen the amount of tellers decrease. So now instead of 10 tellers, they'll only have 3 or 4 because they don't need so many because people can just do everything themselves, either online or at the ATM. So that is why I was asking that those people, those 7, 6 tellers who used to be there are probably out of a job now, aren't they?
Yeah, so that is true and untrue. The reason being that banks are also expanding faster because instead of keeping 7, tellers in one branch, they can actually open 4 branches and get like 2 tellers in each of the branches. I don't know if you've thought of that too.
I
Yeah.
see your math. Yes.
So it's actually more of a strategic planning of, because most of the banks previously, like you're saying, from the security person to all the way to the cleaner, you're getting about 10 people. But COVID also a lot of lessons that you can actually reduce it, but use some of these technological benefits to. But I believe they might not lose their job, and it can be practical that they lost their job because they lack certain digital skills that the organization will definitely streamline and assess you. What can you do with a computer? Can we move your instead of taking you out from the teller units? Can you use your the Python program that you've learned to do predictive analysis for us to invest money into with what clients have paid here? So you ask yourself, if you don't have some of these digital skills, that is the only way you'll be laid off. But any good employer will actually do an assessment before laying you off. Depends on your skill sets.
Okay. So I'm checking the time and I can't believe you're out of time already, but I have 2 more questions and then we'll quickly go into the Q&A. So what has been the biggest challenge for you getting Asustem off the ground? What was the biggest challenge for you?
So I would say it's more of the finances because we use a lot of robots, and getting these robots, just one pack is almost about $1,000. So it means that any branch you should get at least 5 of these sets there to be able to train the kids. And we actually try as much as possible to help the vulnerable kids. I mean the marginalized, where they are not coming from a rich home, their parents are not able to buy them a laptop. They will not be able to do their programming. So we also try to get some of these computers for them to use for their sections. So basically, I think generally, apart from the finances in terms of purchasing of the kits and for operational overheads, I think we've trained ourselves to make sure we work very well with our content design and also curriculum designs. We train our coaches on a regular basis. New coaches go through a lot of job shadowing. They prepare before they assign them to centers. So I believe that is the only challenge currently we face with. Now we're opening up to donors now. I think we started up the donor project just this month, October, trying to connect with employees. And we have so many strategies to even help the employees' kids. So most companies, have a lot of CSR. They don't use it at the end of the month, and it's pulled back into budget. So why don't you give a percentage of that to take care of vulnerable kids, whilst your own kids are also benefiting from some of these STEM interventions? So that is really the major challenge we face with. That has to do with markets, and they're really, really very expensive. They're very, very
I
expensive.
definitely get it. I'm going to just quickly ask you a question that came through from our audience, and then yeah, we'll
Sure.
end the chat. It's been so great. I actually don't want to end it, but I mean, we have to. Okay, so the one question is, do you think we have the legal framework for scaling of robots on the continent?
Yeah. So that has already been taken up. I happen to sit on a number of these discussions. I think with support from UN. They're already doing it, and I know the Ministry of Communication and also what do you call it, the Cybersecurity Commission are working on that to put together a framework. This framework, globally, we don't even have it. It is not existing anywhere. It's currently on the ground stage where every continent is developing documentation. Currently, what they are trying to do is to get a holistic framework for especially with the ethics and how some of these things can operate with humans. So, for example, why should a robot what do you call it, save a child instead of an old person when he realizes there's an accident by the runabout? So that robot, is it supposed to actually pick that child and leave the old woman to die through the crash, or save the old man? So even with the programming of the robots, those algorithms are what they are trying to build frameworks and to protect some of these ethics, so that it becomes very ethical, it is not biased. And as I speak to you now, there's no global documentation like that. It's actually still work in progress. And Ghana have actually taken up that project. I think 2 weeks ago, I was part of a panel like that where we discussed some of these questions.
Okay, wonderful. And then there's a comment here for you. It says, "Great job. The courage to start without funding is incredible."
Thank you.
And then we have, oh, okay, actually, we've already answered this question. It was, what do you have to say to people who have fears that robots will render people jobless? But I feel we've already answered this question because I asked you this. So that's fine. Are you with us? Okay. All right. So 30 minutes is up. I can't believe it's gone by so quickly. But before we end it, what is one thing that you'd like to leave us with in terms of Africa and science, like science in Africa and why it's important, or anything that you want to just like words of encouragement. Let's put it in that way.
Yeah, thank you so much. So what I would say is that we have the intelligence, we have the capacity to do our own research, and I respect a lot of the African researchers who have made a lot of contributions towards the continent. We should just continue with the interventions that we're already doing, and I believe that Africa will be very great. Thank you.
All right. I agree. Africa is already great, and it's going to be even greater once we start doing our own things and we take it seriously. So, thank you so much for
Exactly.
agreeing to do this. I really enjoyed this chat. And thank you for everybody for joining this. It was really, really informative, really insightful. And hopefully, we can have you back on again sometime.
Sure. Sure. Thank you so much too for connecting. We really appreciate that. And the job you're doing,
Yes.
we really admire.
Thank you. And oh, by the way, for those of you who are not in Ghana, you can actually be part of the academy online, isn't it?
Yes, yes. We do online programs, and a lot of students benefited from South Africa, like Nigeria, Liberia, Sierra Leone, through most of our projects that we do. Yes. So you can benefit
Okay.
from it.
Yes, so everybody can join in. All right. Thank you so much, David. Have a fantastic afternoon further. And yeah, chat again
You
soon.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.